Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. Today we are joined by a gentleman who has followed the profession of law for a lot of years and has paused now, and he has written a novel called Errors and Omission. It's published by Doubleday, and his name is Paul Goldstein. Welcome.
Jim, thanks very much.
There is a lot of information on you that I've received from the publisher, and I need to read some of it just so people know who you are. Paul Goldstein knows of what he writes, the publisher tells us. Not only does he happen to be the country's leading academic authority on copyright law, he teaches at Stanford Law School, but he's also of counsel at the law firm of Morrison and Foerster, LLP, and has regularly been included in Best Lawyers in America. In addition, Goldstein has testified before congressional committees dealing with intellectual property issues and has been an invited expert at international government meetings on copyright issues. And while he wasn't doing anything, he's published 8 academic and legal books. This man is busy. So the question that comes to mind, of course, is, so why did you write a novel?
Why did I write a novel? This is something I have been wanting to do for a very long time, much longer than I've been in teaching. I've been writing fiction since I was in junior high school.
No kidding. Wow.
I started a novel, if you can believe it, when I was age 12. I got into it 3 pages, discovered I knew nothing about 17th century Holland, and dropped it at that point, but continued writing stories. I didn't stop doing that until I got to law school and didn't.
But let's stop for a minute. That age at which you started writing fiction is very similar to the age at which Max Kanarick in the book started writing fiction, I think. That's
correct. And, you know, Jim, that's something I didn't think about. It's funny. You write a book, and these surprises come at you after the event.
It's amazing. And the way he became an author is touching, right. I think.
Yeah.
He had this best friend who became Mayor Berman. And Mayor Berman was one of those, bad kids who did a lot of nasty stuff.
That's right.
He stole and things. And Kanarick wrote about him.
This is fascinating. Without getting too much into the details of the plot,
I'm sorry, but
that's
just
perfectly okay. But it's a fascinating insight. I can say that the circumstances under which I started writing around that period, age 12 or so, were a lot better than those under which Max Kanarick started writing.
Yeah. Well, the other question that came to my mind is why do you think that no one has taken on the somewhat esoteric world of intellectual property law fictionally?
I'm only guessing about this because this is the first novel really that turns copyright issues into a legal drama, a legal thriller. Most people will look at it, including lawyers, and see a bunch of rules and not see what lies under those rules. I've been working in this area for almost 40 years now.
Oh, my goodness.
And I've read literally thousands of cases. And what comes through from the cases when you read that many of them is the underlying human drama of authors trying to hold on to some control of that which they've created.
There's a lot of passion there, I would say, and a lot of
tremendous amount
anger and sorrow.
And sorrow, yes. Concern for authorship. I created this. That issue lies at the very heart of this novel, and one quest is of the central character, Michael Seeley, not only to find the author of this work, but to find himself. Really is the author of his own life.
Yeah. The context of it all can also be stated this way. It's a place where billions of dollars turn on fine points of law, and that's really what patent and the intellectual law is all about.
This is right, and that was really the spark that got this novel going. It was a case that I had worked on in Los Angeles in the late 1990s, where on a very narrow question of law, a really technical question of law, the rights to the James Bond franchise, the motion picture franchise, which is a multi-billion-dollar franchise, turned. And MGM UA was trying to hold on to those rights, and I was working on their behalf. There's a wonderful lawyer named Pierce O'Donnell, a trial lawyer who ran that case. And Sony Pictures says, no, we've got the right to make the James Bond franchise. And on a close interpretation of law, turned billions of dollars of value.
Given all that as the context of the book and the sensitivity of it and the insight, yet this is how the book begins. The worst part of being drunk before breakfast is the hangover that turns before noon. Michael Seeley's head throbbed. He was tall and ruddy with an athlete's vigor, but he felt compressed by the narrow room. Now that sounds to me like noir.
It is noir. Michael Seeley is a troubled guy. He's a hero. He's a real hero. He's a very brave guy. But he's troubled, and he's on the ropes. But you may have heard some echoes there of Raymond Chandler as well.
Yes, a little bit. Errors and Omissions starts in a New York judge's chambers, whisks us to Hollywood, then to Munich, all to determine the rights to... more about that when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Paul Goldstein is the guest. The book is called Errors and Omissions. It's about intellectual property law. Do not be scared. It's a heck of a fine read, as an expert tells us, one Sue Grafton, who writes this kind of stuff pretty well. It's difficult, she says, to convey the mounting excitement with which I turned the pages. I think the franchise, if you'll pardon the Hollywood lingo, is fresh and original. Granted, Paul Goldstein is writing a legal thriller, but with such authority. I found the characters believable and the writing itself masterful, not one wasted word. He was always in control of the story, and he did a bang-up job from the beginning through the middle and right out the end. I'm sprinkling fairy dust on this novel from afar. Again, thanks for a terrific read. He has his first fan, but surely not his last. Congratulations. I have never, ever had an author here who's gotten fairy dust from anybody to say, nothing of Sue Grafton. My goodness. What did you pay her?
What did I pay her? I didn't know Sue Grafton until this book came into being.
That's great.
I've never met her in person. We've talked on the phone a couple of times, and we've emailed a bit. She was just terrifically generous in taking the time to read the book and then to give us her thoughts on it.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really gratifying.
You can't buy that.
You cannot buy that.
You cannot buy that. I want to get back to the whole franchise issue later,
sure.
Probably in the last segment. Right now, I'd like to spend a bit of time with the main character, Mike Seeley.
Yeah.
He comes out right away. He bursts upon the scene, if you will, as a very confident, competent lawyer who has a really major drinking problem. Mm-hmm. He's now drinking before breakfast, or breakfast is drinking. And the amazing thing about him, you describe a little later in the book, and I'd like to share part of that, the ability to function that he has. Seeley began getting cases of his own, and soon enough he fell into an irreversible pattern of trying one case then another with no break between, winning cases the way a machine gun fires bullets. First in Buffalo, where he was raised, then in New York. He arrived at the office before dawn to review depositions of witnesses who would be on the stand that day. Returning from trial, he would study the day's transcripts until long after everyone else had left the office. Unable to sleep when he finally got home, he pounded down as much alcohol as he could, as fast as he could, until he passed out on the couch or in an easy chair, any place he happened to be. At some point, he couldn't remember when, he started taking drinks in the morning to clear his mind for the work ahead. Does that describe anybody in your real acquaintance?
I know lawyers who have lived through one aspect of that kind of life or another. For Seeley, alcohol is fuel. It's what keeps him going.
That's a marvelous point. Alcohol is fuel. Scary, but...
Yeah, and he's developed a high tolerance, so he's able to perform with having consumed a tremendous amount of alcohol starting off, as you say, before breakfast. Yet he's able to function. Indeed, he's not able to function without alcohol. He knows that he's ruining himself. He knows that his career is finally falling apart. Alcohol isn't working for him anymore. And part of this book is about his struggle to stop.
Well, he does stop.
He does stop.
By and large.
Yep.
But the terrible thing about his stopping is it brings him no contentment, it seems to me.
Absolutely none. It's a struggle. Every day he's fighting not to drink. And that is part of his heroism, is that he wants to continue in law as he has to save the little guy, to help the little guy. But he knows he's not going to be able to do that anymore if he continues drinking, yet he doesn't know how not to continue drinking. That's the struggle.
And so his alcoholism becomes a theme, if you will, of the novel, from that opening sentence to the very end. To the very end.
It's a very important theme of the book.
One of the other things that's going on in the book is all the business about the HUAC and the California State investigation of writers, particularly Hollywood writers. Right. And you have a twist on that I liked because, as I mentioned to you off air, it kind of makes the whole thing hang together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The twist is this. I didn't invent it. There's a scholar by the name of John Lewis at Oregon State, who's an article by him that I just came across in the course of writing the book, is adopted by one of the characters in the book, Julia Walsh. And it's a very interesting premise that Wall Street was really behind the blacklist as a vehicle for getting the left-wingers out of the unions so they can turn Hollywood into a factory that could turn out television programs like soap. And that was the theory behind this. And
so the labor side became populated by young folks who didn't know the ropes.
Did not know the ropes.
Were not worthy adversaries of the people in management.
And became malleable.
That's an interesting way to look at it. The other thing that was good about that, at least for me, was that it made me follow that part of the plot. Errors and Omission is haunted, I think, by one character, Max Kanarick. He and the franchise when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. Our guest today, Paul Goldstein. His book, Errors and Omissions, a novel, a wonderful, I guess, legal thriller focusing on parts of the law that nobody else has ever focused on before. Publishers Weekly goes on about it. Goldstein, a Stanford law professor, takes a tired legal thriller convention for his debut. The alcoholic attorney staring into a personal and professional abyss, and spins out a fresh, sharp-witted drama about Hollywood's blacklist with sharp dialogue and a well-formed main character. Goldstein, who does a fine job of breaking down complicated moral, ethical, and historical issues to understandable nuggets, has laid the foundation for what could be a strong franchise. Now we have two franchise references, one from our friend Sue Grafton, who sprinkles dust on things. She says the franchise is fresh and original. Publishers Weekly says could be a strong franchise. So how goes the franchise, Paul?
The franchise goes well. I'm working on the deal I have with Doubleday is a 2-book deal, and I'm working on the second book right now. It's going a bit more quickly, with fewer dead ends than the first. The first novel has a lot of dead ends in it. This one is going very well. It finds Michael Seeley in this neighborhood. He's going to be in San Francisco and Silicon Valley and South San Francisco. And it's coming along well, and I think as soon as my agent saw the word franchise in the Publisher's Weekly Review, she said, "And are you thinking about numbers 3 and 4?" And I am thinking about 3 and 4 as well.
And then we have to have a Mike Seeley mystery,
a Michael Seeley
or thriller, or Michael Seeley
there you are.
legal thriller.
Yeah,
right.
He's discovering
we
that
we don't charge for this copywriting suggestion.
Jim, I appreciate it, and you will find that Michael Seeley is discovering that redemption comes not all at once, but in bits and pieces.
Okay. All right. That's all we want to know. It's the franchise is alive and well.
Yep.
And cooking. I want to delve a little bit into Max Kanarick, whom I loved. I mean, we talked a little bit about him early in his youth and his relationship to another major character, Maya Berman, and toward the end of the book, he's described as very sick, self-pitying, a dying man who wants to do what? Is it clear what he wants to do?
He is so dissolute by the end of the book that Seeley can look in his face and see his own future if he continues drinking. That's Kanarick, like Seeley, is an alcoholic, but I'd say I think physicians would characterize him as a late-stage alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And Seeley sees his future there, and that just intends to add some resonance to the story.
And he also sees a similarity there of a person who is willing, either perhaps unbeknownst, to be dominated by another person. How little we know, you're right, about the motives of those we would let control us. Okay? Not just Maya Berman, Seeley thought, but Randall Rappaport, who's a judge, Daphne Hancock, a big person at his law firm. The long line of his oppressors, real and imagined. Our ignorance gives them a power over our lives that none of them would even dream of. Our attempts to undermine their authority work only to enhance it. And Lothar Selig, his own father, who comes from the same part of the world with some of the same background. So, I mean, here to me was a major moment in the novel where so much that has been going on is drawn together in one very, very insightful and fascinating paragraph.
Well, you've got a good eye. That's one of my favorite passages, and it does. I'm glad to hear you're the first person I've spoken with about it. That it did for you exactly what I was hoping it would do.
So that what it does, and I think this is important, is that which is causes people to do things, and if it comes from another era and another time, well, that's their problem. That would never happen to us. And what you're talking about here is, look again, fella.
Yep.
Because the same darn thing is going on now. And then there is some suggestion toward the end as to what Mike Seeley will be like in the next part of the franchise. But I don't think we should go into that. Are you enjoying life as a novelist?
I'm loving it right now. It's been terrific.
Okay. And the book is Errors and Omissions. The author, Paul Goldstein, knifing us to stop by. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.